The numbers coming in from Los Angeles are staggering. Imagine the entire population of Providence, Rhode Island, suddenly forced to evacuate their homes. That's exactly what we're seeing with 180,000 people fleeing these devastating wildfires.
Those evacuation numbers are just the beginning of this crisis. The scale of destruction is almost beyond comprehension.
You know what's particularly haunting? The death toll has reached 13, now 8 in Los Angeles proper, 5 in the Palisades. Each one represents a family shattered by this disaster.
And the property damage is unprecedented, over 12,000 structures destroyed. How are emergency services even beginning to handle something of this magnitude?
Well, here's what's fascinating. From a scientific perspective, this fire is actually creating its own weather system. The intense heat generates what we call pyrocumulus clouds, which can produce their own lightning strikes and wind patterns.
So the fire is essentially feeding itself?
Exactly. And when you combine that with wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour and humidity levels in the single digits, you've got what fire scientists call a perfect storm for extreme fire behavior.
You mentioned the wind speeds. That's exactly what makes this so challenging for firefighters, isn't it?
Right. And here's something most people don't realize. These winds are making traditional firefighting methods almost useless. The water drops from helicopters are being dispersed before they even reach the flames in some cases.
Speaking of water, I've heard there are serious resource shortages hampering the firefighting efforts.
That's one of the most critical issues. The fire teams are having to make impossible choices about which areas to prioritize. And get this, they're using new satellite technology to track the fire's movement in real time, something that wasn't even possible 5 years ago.
Well, that's at least some good news in terms of technological advancement.
But here's what's really concerning. The average size of wildfires in California has increased by about 800% since the 1970s. And when you look at the climate projections, this is likely just the beginning.
So what you're saying is that this might become the new normal?
Unfortunately, yes. And let me share something shocking, that $120 million mansion that burned down. The owner had actually invested in state-of-the-art fire protection systems, but they proved completely inadequate against this level of fire intensity.
That really puts things in perspective. If even the most expensive fire protection systems can't handle these blazes, what hope do average homeowners have?
Well, urban planners are actually suggesting we need to completely rethink how we build in these regions. Some are proposing expanded fire breaks, others are calling for restrictions on development in high-risk areas.
The long-term implications of this are just staggering.
You know what's particularly interesting? The fire behavior we're seeing now matches what climate scientists predicted would happen by 2050, except it's happening right now, decades ahead of schedule.
That's truly sobering. How are communities supposed to adapt to this accelerated timeline?
Well, some regions are already implementing new strategies like creating community-wide emergency alert systems and establishing predetermined evacuation routes. But here's the thing, we're really in uncharted territory with these mega fires.
And the human cost is just overwhelming.
It truly is. And while the immediate focus is on containing this fire, the recovery process will take years. We're not just talking about rebuilding structures, we're talking about rebuilding entire communities, support systems, and ways of life.
Looking ahead, what should people be watching for?
3 things. First, keep an eye on how building codes evolve in fire-prone areas. Second, watch for new firefighting technologies being developed specifically for these megafires. And finally, pay attention to how insurance companies respond. They might end up driving major changes in where and how we build our communities.